I am making a challenge for myself because I'm feeling like a lazy millennial who'd rather get substance from scraps inside a fast food garbage can than actually do anything with his own life. And like a lazy millennial, I feel as if I can judge whatever I want with no consequences. So, since I play an abhorrent amount of games like a person from Gen Z or X or whatever the heck boomers think are ruining the earth, I might as well throw my opinion to the fountain of game opinions that no little wish-giving fairy cares about, then tell them how to do their jobs better. The first penny will be for Remnant from the Ashes, and since I also subscribe to a family game where you roll 5 dice, I too shall pronounce this title with a dry heave. Remnant from the Ashes is a game where the fairies thought, you know what would make a fantasy game that is very dark a lot better? Guns! And sci-fi. And behold, they were wrong. That's at least what my brother said, because get this, I have never played Dark Souls before. I was young enough and unfortunate enough to be the younger brother, so I had to watch my older brother play through them. Anything he says is good, I have to be doubtful about, since my older brother would go as far as to eat a dry, stale saltine cracker just so he could see my face when I ate it. So I did, and just as quickly spat it out. Sadly not all over his face, but forgive me, I was too short at the time. Spoiler warning! Starting now, because I pretend not to care for my fellow man, or my fellow woman, or my fellow attack heliocopter, but it's mainly just to save my own hide, in case I make a mistake and spill the beans that the grand elusive final boss is a coma patient who has an ache for a head. The journey kicks off with some unseen old lady voice, probably your grandma, dressing you up in green and sending you on a boat to go to a tower, but instead of fighting an oversized boar, you instead have to fight a bunch of bleeding broccoli, instead of befriending normal broccoli. When you arrive at the mainland, you'll see that everyone there has evolved to have less facial muscles, and that they're required by some form of law to pause awkwardly after every sentence. With the plot vaguely made fun of, let's see what I personally dislike about this game that the little fairies have made, and how to improve on their life's work. Oh, and what I liked about it, if the video needs more runtime. We'll start with movement, since it is what you'll be doing for the most part. After all, I couldn't imagine dodge rolling in an armchair, which I had to increase stamina to the max just so I wouldn't get caught trying to pant on the enemies and be unable to dodge once they smelled my breath. You have to start a bit early when you dodge roll, so you can't really use it as a get out of jail free card, which when you try to use it as such, the banker will just rip up the card. Then you. Probably because they smelled your breath. Sadly, there is no corrosive damage for breath, unlike the crossbow revolver, which can't deal corrosive damage, but they do damage. They are my personal favorite combination on the account that it just feels good to fire them. But if the enemy gets too close, you are suddenly aiming over their heads to hit them where their gray matter resides. Maybe not for the trees. I think I need a gun that fires axes to chop their heads. One of the things that perplexed me was with the sniper rifle, the default button to zoom was the middle mouse button. So anytime I zoomed, I would accidentally scroll to my secondary and try to snipe with a pea shooter from half a football field away. Until I rebounded, then I had to get used to ruining all my button instincts. And the other thing was a submachine gun that gets more accurate the more you fire. Look, I'm not complaining, but is this weapon made by Hyperion? Did one of the aliens bring it down to Earth as a joke? Which does make it easier to do headshots, and when you deal headshot damage, the numbers are in red, like they are excited that you hit a weak point, unless they don't have a weak point, which you have to then rely on critical hits to bring color to this gray world. I don't know how I feel about some enemies not having weak spots. On one hand, it makes sense, since it is a way to make enemies beefier without having to make them go on a mirror world diet. But on the other hand, I can put an entire 20 points into doing more Deus Ex Machina damage and it will have no effect on the swine. Thankfully, all the bosses I encountered had weak points. I do wish the bosses dropped more sidearms, though. On my playthrough, it wasn't until the final zone that I got a bunch of sidearms, all variations of pistols. So I was using a pea shooter till I found a coin in the adventure mode which gave me a revolver. The only other secondary I found at the time that could use mods besides the starter pea shooter, until I found a submachine gun. Then I wondered if Hyperion decided that the tower might be a vault. Which, speaking of mods, I liked the variety and found a good use for most of them. Not all of them, sadly, but beggars can't be choosers. The one that totally isn't Sword Dance is pretty useless compared to the Hunter's Mark, which makes all enemies glow like they got tangled in Christmas lights, and you are more likely to get a critical hit, probably from breaking the Christmas lights. However, almost all the mobs have the ability to dodge. Quite an amazing ability, I know. They don't always dodge when you aim at them, though, which makes it when they do dodge annoying as all heck. Almost as annoying as the totally not Kaku demons that keep hitting me from behind like my father does when a sibling tattles on me. This game is randomly generated. Sorry, was making sure you weren't getting bored and wandered off to get some ice cream, or a golden idol. I don't think it should have been random, unless it had more content, or at least allow us to intercede so that way I could guarantee that I would get a coin, because I had to go through 4 adventure motors to get the darn thing, and to be honest, it wasn't very enjoyable. Thankfully, I had plenty of audiobooks I could listen to, so I could bore my eyes as well as my ears. If it could also make my sense of feeling bored, I might have been able to use the game to go to bed. I am making it known that I rather like this remnant of a game, or else I wouldn't be trying to 100% it right now. And just because a game isn't as good as Dark Souls doesn't mean it's bad. After all, saltine crackers are plain but still taste good, as long as there is peanut butter and no older brother.